Chapter 23. Good morning. Zamson woke to a lightweight Naia wrapped around him, as if he would vanish like a forbidden dream at any minute. All he was able to see was red hair. Naia's dreadlocks splayed all over the place, covering their naked bodies a bit like a blanket of crimson. Morning light sprinkled their resting shapes. A lovely look that Zamson knew wasn't going to last the second he tried to slip away from her. He couldn't move. His neck throbbed too. Her dreads shackled his arms and legs. They even collared his neck like some favorite pet. All he was missing was a silver dog tag that said Zamson in big engraved letters, a joke of sorts revealing the obvious in Naia favoring Zamson. He had good DCK, wit, diplomacy, and a will that kept on keeping on. He was also fast in the streets and much, much more. He also tasted good. His blood. The sting to his neck wasn't Naia's dreadlock tentacles around his neck, but what hid behind them. He felt at the flesh and realized the slight ache matched where she once bit him before. She fed on him again. Last night. When they fged. Or was that what they were doing? Fging. The way she straddled him. The slippery grip of her convulsing paswai grinding him down until he exploded within her. Memories of her slithering shape returned. How she rocked like a belly dancer in heat, gyrating her hips to an unheard beat save for the romantic rhythm of their hearts, and the carnal sounds that left their heavy breathing mouths. When she laid on him, still squirming, still milking him of his seed, her forehead touched his. He remembered how warm and tender she became. A lust-stricken beast transforming into a passionate creation that devoted herself to him. Her manner of embrace mirrored a long-time lover who had returned. And he was the long-time lover who had returned. What made him think Naia was going to let a wolven like him go this time? He laid there. For now. With a careful hand easing on over to remove what hair he could from Naia's face showed the gentlest creature to ever get close to him in such a short period. Asleep, Naia was at her most serene state. For as long as she was in that peaceful slumber, she wasn't a potential menace to the world. The corner of his lip cracked a warm smirk as he watched so much peace and tranquility radiate from her vampiric shape. Memories resurfaced. Recollections of the unknown crept inside his mind as he laid with her. Moving images of himself in a heavily forested cave, surrounded by wolven in their natural form. They crowded around Zamson with importance, kneeling, their wolfish heads bowed with flattened ears and limp tails. Some were dressed in robes, cloaked as if part of a cult. Others were plated in iron and steel. Among them stood another across the way. On the other side of the kneeling wolven, Naia stood. Her shapely presence stood grim and absolute, though shockingly supportive. She gave him one firm and queenly nod before Zamson raised his claw into a fist, howled, and the wolven howled with them. A battle cry. An incredible one. And that wasn't Zamson. The vision ended as Zamson tiredly called his name. Andreas. Naia stirred awake. Her tight dreads loosened around Zamson as she sat up to crawl half of her body onto him. Her nails carefully ran down his chest. Red lines from their previous union marked him up well there. Her eyes flourished awake. The golden glow of her gaze appeared to spill into the eternal darkness of her slit pupils. Behind that wicked stare lived the endlessness of her dark soul. Beautiful yet malignant-like. How the light of her eyes tried to fill the pupils' void. Beyond that void dwelt peaks of mental distress. Anger, vengeance, lust, and dark hope. Plucking that cocktail of mixed emotions may draw forth a cunning beast of ruthless habit. An unstable creature who did not adhere to the laws of the new world and wanted to conquer it. Zamson wouldn't let her. Perhaps the morning stare in silence was another battle of wits. Who will submit? Who will excite who into another erotic entanglement? Who will come to their senses and do what's suitable for Twilight City? For the world. Come what may, showing Naia that this era possessed a shining hope for all conscious beings was deserving of struggle. Zamson managed to crack a tiny smirk. Do they not say good morning from where you're from? The staring contest washed away as his voice came deeper than usual upon Naia's ears. Her ears actually twitched. Her waking calm was too cool to display any kind of wonder, for she wasn't surprised, she was pleased. Because the tone of his voice reminded her of someone. Where I am from, she told him. There are no mornings. Only darkness. Zamson quirked his brow. She slowly gave her best smile. That was what you call a joke. Knocking at the door broke their little time together. Naia quickly shot a bothered look towards the entrance. Zamson sat up. Tried to. Naia palmed his chest. Her vampirial strength was apparent. Her sudden concern was far more visible. Zamson gently grabbed her wrist, prying her off of him, which she surprisingly obeyed as they both stood up together. Another knock. The thump to the door clued Zamson in. Only one person knocked like that. He gave Naia a look. She thinned her eyes, sighed as she reached for his chin to touch him one last time with a kiss, then vanish in a blink of the eye. The person kept knocking. Zamson slipped on his sweatpants. Forgetting the shirt, he went for the door. Shane noticed the claw marks on Zamson's chest the moment he opened up. They both traded modest stares. If a nosy neighbor saw them, the moment would be perfectly laughable. "I'm not even gonna ask," said Shane. "I wasn't even gonna share," replied Zamson. "And now that's out of the way." Shane rubbed the back of his head, a little nervous. "We gotta do something about Logan." Zamson looked confused. It was only for a second as his face straightened up fast. Who did what to piss him off? Chapter 24 Rivals. Logan's wolven skull rang from the heavy punch thrown by another wolven fist. Copper-furred knuckles were plated in thick brass. Logan staggered from the hit. His legs denied defeat. Holding tough, he ducked the second burly swing. His wolven opponent snarled, then yelped. The second Logan's red fist crashed under the wolven's chin, hurling the beast's whole head back. Any more force with that would have caused Bardolph Todrick's head to snap. Wolven, in their human and natural forms, circled the two fighters going at it. Logan snarled and rushed Bardolph. The copper wolven struggled to recover. He couldn't move. He was rapidly pummeled in the gut, ribs, chest, both sides of his thick jaws, then a stronger, heavier, meaner knee to the chin. Logan presented enough strength and equilibrium to retain Bardolph's head perched. Just right for Logan's laced hands to crash into the beast's skull. Logan hopped back on his pawed feet, a bouncing stance to avoid stagnation in his bristling red fighting form. Bardolph growled as he lifted from the pavement, huffing and puffing in bloody wrath. Pandemona and Sapphire Crush, another blue sports car driven by Shane, raced into the alley. The crowd scattered for Zamson and Shane to pull in. Several wolven refused to move. Pandemona's scalding engine roared and snorted red-hot embers from its hood vents. The rebellious wolven backed off. Zamson and Shane hurried out of their cars. Bardolph and his boys showed up. Bardolph hit Logan's bike. Zamson couldn't believe it. Seriously. Car door nearly knocked it down. Petty motherfucker. He didn't even apologize. Was like he was looking for a fight. Zamson laughed a little. And he got it. They spectated the battle of beasts. Bardolph swung. Logan bobbed and weaved, his feet carefully planted to the earth. He found an opening and threw his fist into Bardolph's rib. Bardolph howled in pain. He reached for Logan, catching him by the back of his furry muscles, and latched his sharp teeth into his neck.
Logan snarled in pure rage.
Bardolph chomped him good. The pain ignited a new level of rage as Bardolph was lifted off his feet. Logan charged the wolven into the dumpster, crushing steel. Bardolph dropped onto the pavement, lifting up, yet to be defeated. Logan couldn't have that. He grabbed the big beast by the neck, slung Bardolph against the bricks and roared. His thunderous shout boomed the whole alley before Logan turned to lift up the dumpster. The sound of metal crashed his opponent. The crowd groaned. Zamson made an ugly face. Everyone felt that. Shane frowned as he sighed. Did he have to throw the dumpster? "Your friend displays a ravager's strength," Naia said from inside Zamson's head. Zamson nearly forgot that Naia can somehow see what he sees. It came to his attention now that this had to have been from their union. He kept his thoughts on that concealed for now. A good thing she can't read minds. There lived others like him. Long ago. Their strength and ferocity rivaled the wrath of barbarians. Bardolph shoved the dumpster off of him and slowly rose again. Logan grunted in annoyance. The red wolven huffed as muscles flexed as he breathed. A standoff took place. Zamson cut it short. "Motherfkin Bardolph Todrick." Bardolph whipped his head towards Zamson and growled. His bushy brow narrowed in annoyance. "Fboya Zamson Lovell." He was quickly shifting to human form in a burst of moon dust blasting from his body. He rubbed the blood from his lip. Any bruises shown from his prior bout with Logan healed with quickness. Why is the loser spared? Naia didn't understand. Your friend should kill him where he stands. Zamson ignored her statement. Saying nothing, he showed her why instead. If not for how important it was for Bardolph to stay alive, Logan would have done worse than throw a dumpster at him. Who would have guessed that you would be out here barking like the little beatish that you are? Zamson stood his ground as Bardolph came for him. Shouldn't you be focusing on more important matters, like tonight's race? Bardolph was face to face with Zamson. The amber color of Bardolph's eyes enhanced his grim mood. "FCK outta here. You think I need to worry myself about taking you out? Nah bruh. Your clock is up in Mephisto." Zamson was mildly amused. "You think so, huh? Bet." Bardolph composed himself, chest high and imposing. His head straightened with a bit of a cocky tilt as he saw Zamson for the obstacle that he was. I'm just saving yours for the main course. You can forget the Mad Blitz. Logan, yet to shed his wolven form, growled. Bardolph was talking tough. Too tough. And Shane agreed. He's got heart. Yeah, said Zamson. He does. But he lacks one critical element. He stepped from Bardolph to half-circle him, as if he was sizing him up. A brain. It's one thing to cut a fool out here in Saints Plaza. It's another to fuck with Logan's wheels. I'm surprised he didn't kill you. Logan released a wolfish grumble. Still thinking about it. Dog, to hell with this. Bardolph backed off as he raised his hands and snapped his fingers. He smirked at Zamson. Enjoy your day while it lasts. Bardolph and his little crew returned to their cars. The Emerald Dream was Bardolph's ride. A green-coated Bolt CL1. A supercharged monster full of horsepower. Bardolph had one of the fastest cars in the city, rival to Zamson's Pandemona. A problem that Zamson will have to correct behind the wheel. Bardolph's car revved up. The other cars in his entourage followed suit, revving up their engines as if to taunt Zamson, Logan, and Shane. Bardolph rolled down his tinted window, looking dead at Zamson. We end this tonight. Oh, and Logan. He looked at him. I apologize for not crushing your precious roadhog. He chuckled like some evil thug, then peeled off. The other cars shot off with him. Their modded turbo engines buzzed off into the distance like an obnoxious parade. A soft hum of realization buzzed inside Zamson's head. I see. You need him to live for competition. Logan reverted into his human form and rolled his shoulder, taking out a cramp that quickly corrected itself. If it wasn't for Mephisto. Tell you what. Zamson turned on his heels to walk. Logan and Shane walked with him. They were heading for the plaza. They had to leave the alley to get to Logan's bike, which was around the corner. After we win, you can finish rocking his head to the dark. Chapter 25 Downfall. South Central Forge is a deserted manufactory plant off the edges of Twilight City where most do not frequent save for the strays, and what illegal dealings go down in the abandoned factories gathering against the borders of the city's nightlife. A cluster of homesteads dotted South Central's west expanse, shielded off by a lush forest to further border the residencies in an effort to exclude the housing complexes from the rundown factory's eyesores. The only good road to lead anyone and anything with wheels was Forger's Path, another long winding road with a few curves embracing South Central Forge's massive buildings save for the deserted roads that traveled between them. Zamson, Logan, and Shane emerged from Forger's Path full speed, easing up on the gas as they slipped into the parting street crowd, only for Logan and Shane to park on the side. Zamson slowly crawled Pandemona alongside Emerald Dream, Bardolph's car. Two giggling vampirial women scrambled over to Zamson. They looked drunk. Or high. Perhaps both. They called out Zamson's name, calling him the Black Wolf, with one of them wasting no time fumbling her fingers over Pandemona's hood, admiring her otherworldly frame. Logan and Shane caught up with Zamson on foot. They were just in time for the groupie moment. Naia's voice filled Zamson's head. Goo. You've managed to attract leeches looking to suck you into oblivion. A shame I do not share. They fawned over Zamson, and more groupies arrived. While some men appeared in the bunch to praise and encourage Zamson's victory, others admired Pandemona, taking photos, even asking Zamson to take pictures with them. Interrupted by Logan's sudden nudge, Zamson looked up from his conversation with the spectators to follow Logan's gesture. He followed the gesture and met his eyes on his opponent. Bardolph, surrounded by his own fan club, glaring at Zamson, as typical rivals would do. Zamson entertained the moment, raising his head at Bardolph in an upwards nod. Bardolph let the staring contest last a few seconds before he arrogantly cast his eyes away and into the group, circling him like a celebrity. Ready to put him back in his corner? Logan asked. This wasn't the first time Bardolph met defeat at the hands of a very fortunate Zamson, who had beaten Bardolph on numerous occasions. It created a very volatile rivalry. Zamson studied the Green Bolt CL1, Bardolph's Emerald Dream. Its frame rivaled Pandemona in some small aspects. Same set for its devilish speed. Whatever it takes. Shane felt his pocket vibrate and pulled his smartphone out from it. His high spirits dulled seconds after he answered. Among a starstruck crowd, Zamson and Logan ran their mouths until Zamson received a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Shane handing him his smartphone.
Answered Zamson.
We expected to see you running Mephisto, Sir Lovell. The sophisticated voice perked his ears. Zamson kept himself chilled. He pretended the phone call with Noctavion Vladimus was trivial. Sup? The key to true speed rests in the unrestrained. You Black Wolf are a creature that knows no chain. Nice to see you haven't lost touch after what occurred during our agreement. Zamson leaned on Pandemona, crossing his legs and pocketing a hand. He kept up the act. You know how it is. Everything that comes my way is just another small bump in the road. Noctavion chuckled. It sounded more like an amused grunt. I don't know if I should take that as an insult or an extreme compliment. Don't let me keep you from reaching the top. And when you get there, another proposition awaits. Soon. The call ended. Zamson stared off into the distance, searching, looking high, where the factory's main building still stood tall. His eyes roasted a fleeting red. I see nothing. The voice of Naia lingered in his mind. Zamson turned to get inside his car and prepared himself. Shane hurried to the Pandemona's driver's window. Zamson rolled down his window to hand him his phone. It was him. Shane guessed. Wasn't it? Doesn't matter, answered Zamson as his driver's window slid up to a close. As the race began, the two vampirial groupies that were grinning all up in Zamson's face performed the countdown. The two reached the countdown's end with a loud go, as they posed back to back, pointing to the street ahead, where Zamson and Bardolph sped by them like howling rockets. Pandemona soared into the streets, hitting brakes and whipping into turns until the factory vanished and Twilight City zipped into view. Forger's Path became Celeste Boulevard, which ended up becoming Dawnguard Strip. Pandemona and Emerald Dream kept on each other's tails, crossing each other every which way as Zamson snaked through traffic. His brain was set on autopilot. All the public was able to catch was a blazing black car stalked by a mean green horse-powered machine. Emerald Dream screamed behind Zamson, coming up on Pandemona fast. Zamson hit an intersection. He reduced speed. He made a hard left at the very last second, zooming down a cloudy alley path. Dumpsters evaded on the way through. Emerald Dream stayed on Pandemona's rear, tearing down the alley right with him. Zamson floored it to the next street and swerved a hard right. He came upon a long rising stretch, a bit of a hill right on the next crossing coming up too fast. Bardolph reached Zamson's side. They launched through the intersection like four-wheel jets, forcing cars on each side to violently brake and honk horns. The two race cars hit the streets in a violent spark. Wheels kept on ripping down the road. Zamson floored it again, leaving Bardolph to witness the embers drifting from Pandemona's fiery black tires. Bardolph charged through the embers. Their cars were once more neck and neck, fighting to surpass the other. Each turn they brake hard and whipped their wheels into a skid and dash. They weaved from lane to lane, drifting curves, madly accelerating. South Central Forge returned by the mile. They blazed under a bridge. They crossed into the shoulder and barreled along it at a crazy speed. Pandemona reached the off-ramp and hurled through that. Emerald Dream close behind as Bardolph whipped his ride into the final lane, pushing it until he reached Zamson once again. The two were maniacs striving to prove a point. Performance engines roar. Turbos squealing. The world became a blur. The finish line approached. Zamson's mind began to lock up with visions. He shook it off at first. The visions suddenly clouded his mind, intruding on his concentration. Outrunners needed to be one with their cars, calculating by the second. Not this time. The fiery jaws of a wolven that wasn't him invaded his thoughts, snarling and snapping from the unknown. Zamson shook it off again. The memories returned with a vengeance. Zamson's head began to throb. Then Pandemona jerked and trembled. What's happening? Naia exclaimed. Zamson didn't seem to hear her worried voice thrumming inside his head, too concerned with Pandemona's sudden fault. The fault was in his own hands and his head. He was losing control. Sparks and embers shot from Pandemona like a chaotic machine hurling into critical mass. Zamson attempted to slow up, his effort bombed by the piercing pain assaulting his brain, and an unexplained tug of the steering wheel. Zamson snarled, "The F!" and Naia shouted, "Andreas!" Pandemona flipped off her wheels and barrel rolled ahead. Bardolph cursed and whipped Emerald Dream to a screeching halt. The crowd fell into a frantic shock. Logan and Shane rushed towards the tumbling car. It came straight at them until stopping inches over the finish. Chapter 26. Blackfire. Logan shouted for Zamson to make some sort of sign of life within Pandemona's searing chassis. The car became a furnace holding the gates of black hell. Dark flames swirled and lashed at the air. Embers flickered a hot red. They couldn't get close. No one could. Not even Logan or Shane as they wolfed out and went full wolven to rescue their homeboy. Shane's fur was a golden brown. If he wasn't careful, he'd lose that fur from Pandemona's flames. The fires were too hot. Scalding hot. The heat wave itself was unbearable to the senses. Bardolph stood on top of Emerald Dream, keeping a safe distance from the dark blaze. The The crowds looked in shock and horror. Others recorded the incident with their smartphones. This was sure to go viral, especially as to how Pandemona's driver door popped off of its hinges, and a full black flaming wolven with smoldering red eyes rose from Pandemona's infernal frame. A black wolf that blazed a black smokeless fire. Logan remained silent. He witnessed this before. The burning wolven hopped off of Pandemona. Burning fissures sizzled beneath the black beast's fiery feet. From pointed ears to wolf tail, the beast appeared more demonic than wolven. A creature unfamiliar to the onlookers struggled to make sense of what they were seeing. The emergence forced Bardolph off the hood of his car. He slipped inside Emerald Dream and reached for his phone, making a call behind the scenes. Zzz. Shane hoped. If Zamson's incident during the mission to abduct Naia didn't make sense to him then, it did now. The flaming wolven snorted and shivered his head. Zamson grabbed his canine head. His mind throbbed with memories of himself clashing with another. He dropped to a knee growling. It was uncertain if he was in pain or annoyed. Shane called him again. Zamson. Zamson snapped his head at the wolven. Shane snarled, and in the most insane force and speed, leaped out of the streets, over the frantically ducking crowds, and charged into the darkness of the deserted factories. Shane released a worried grumble. He would have chased after Zamson, but Logan's burly arm stopped Shane, deciding against it. For now. The factories welcomed a new visitor rampaging through its facilities like a feral force of rabid nature too dangerous to approach. After a while of stampeding and tearing up old machinery, the maddened Zamson rested in an open space lined with ruined pillars and fractured floors, the moon's light pouring through the busted windows above him. His mind plunged into a frenzy. Flashes of the past. The armored werewolves. A great battle sprawling across woodlands and valleys. Vampirials fighting wolven. Humans wield powers beyond human perception. Echoes of Naia's voice calling out Zamson's name. Until the vision of a wolven that burned like a mad volcano howling before the rising of a red moon shifted Naia's calling from Zamson to another.
Andreas.
Zamson growled and slapped his head in annoyance. Enough. Silence came on command. The memories stopped. The voices ceased. Zamson's sharp-pointed ears began to twitch to the water dripping beyond the shadows, or what critters skittered across the cold floor. They avoided the black beast and his insufferable heat radiating from him. Their tiny feet get them by as quick as fear itself hits them. All but one. Zamson released a low growl, turning to face the quiet steps of Naia appearing out of the shadows. The moon's light through the window panes brushed over her thickness now hugged in skimpy silk, looking like a temptress of the night. A succubus queen of the night, really. She appeared with wings expanded from her back as she sauntered towards an unstable Zamson. His senses slowly returned. Naia was all too familiar to him and more. Andreas, she called him. Again, having screamed his name before. A fiendish-like sound escaped Zamson's muzzle. His voice mixed with a crackling fire. Why are you calling me that? Naia stepped into the hot radiation Zamson emitted. The heat embraced her skin, and her nipples stood to attention. She reached for his jaw, sliding her hand across his thick muzzle to find her fingers stroking behind his ear. Because that's who you are. From within. Zamson narrowed his eyes. It would be foolish to deny her words. Andreas lived in his blood, lurking in the depths of memories unclaimed, memories fighting for recognition. He felt Andreas desiring some kind of unity. He reached for Naia's arm. Her skin never blistered. Who is Andreas and what is he to you? Oh, dark lover. You ask questions you already know the answer to. She caressed her lips to his muzzle. The fires of 1,000 dark hells seemed to retreat back into Zamson's inner self. The black wolf of smokeless fire, reduced by a simple kiss. With a final surge of affection, Zamson regressed to his human form. His lips never left hers. He insisted she answer him. Truthfully. No more riddles. Tell me. When we are safe. She promised. She didn't intend to linger long. They may get spotted. She couldn't resist coming to him. She was afraid. I thought I've lost you, she told him. Zamson was uncertain if she was talking to him or Andreas. You didn't. He looked past her, thinking. Pandemona needed repairs. Big time. Looks like my luck decided to bust on me. But you won, she reminded him. Her hands cupped his face, thumbs brushing his cheeks. Won't be long now. We shall both have what we want. Nothing can destroy you. Nothing. Zamson studied the warmth about her features. Still seductive but tender at heart. The sound of her heartbeat was a little more peaceful than her usual upbeat throb that habitually arose with a feisty or sensual pitch. Their time together has started to blossom. He still retained a possibility of her changing face and going back on her word. The other shoe can always drop. Footsteps ripped Zamson's gaze from her and towards a busted wall leading outside.
Zzz.
Shane called.
Is.
Logan shouted next. They emerged from the hole in the wall, finding Zamson alone. Chapter 27. A king of smokeless fire. If one walked into Zamson's garage, Pandemona awaited them in all her obsidian glory. Her engine was a heart of fire. Her chamber harbored a sense of comfort, a slice of home on 4 mean wheels. She indeed was a masterpiece that no ordinary man could build with their hands. A shame that all changed tonight. Accidents happened, disasters often shape the lives of those victimized by its event. In the case of Zamson Lovell, the unthinkable cost him nearly his life. He was unprepared and bewildered, lost in a pool of unsolved thoughts behind the crisis of Pandemona. His calculations were precise. His confidence was assured. And although he won against Bardolph by an unfavorable technicality, succeeding Mephisto at this point on was a bust now that Pandemona lay destroyed before him. This is bad, said Shane. He sat backward in his chair, staring at Pandemona with disbelief as he spun his keys in hand. This couldn't be happening. This was all wrong. Logan palmed the table of tools and scrap machinery that Zamson also sat on. He studied the car's damage. If Zamson was pure human, death would have visited his friend that night. You have any idea how this could happen? Zamson had nothing. He stroked his chin as he leaned against a table. Nothing of reasoning came to him. Your guess is as good as mine. And I hate to guess. Like it was pulled out of my grip. She started jerking as if she suffered some sort of seizure, then jacked at the wheel. Naia circled the wreckage while they spoke. Cars were still a new and fascinating piece of technology, unlike the era she had once known. She touched its steel, admiring what remained of its make, silently sensing whatever she could muster from its presence. We can figure out Pandemona in a moment. But first, Logan placed his attention where it mattered, on Zamson. No more pushing matters aside. Time to tell us what the hell's going on with you. Trust and believe, Zamson said. I've been trying to figure that out my damn self. Naia stays quiet. Her silence was so deep that she appeared as if non-existent among the three. Logan and Shane were oblivious to the full extent of Zamson's condition. Logan witnessed Zamson's death at the hands of the vampirial he had been getting himself entangled with. Or was it the other way around? Logan never trusted Naia. One brief look at her connected the dots. She was the reason for all of this. Logan tolerated her presence for the sake of getting Zamson through this predicament brought upon by Noctavion's diabolic ambitions in claiming ascension through Naia's demise. If Noctavion got what he wanted, it was evident what could become of the global populace. Naia's own ascension was no safer. Now, Zamson produced powers beyond his natural wolven strength. And everyone in the room wanted to know. Except for Naia. She already knew. Her silence was as golden as the light in her predatory eyes. They were staring at something. Inside Pandemona. Unknown to the untrained eye. When I died, I returned as something else. Zamson managed to understand his unprecedented sense of evolution as best as he could. Something different. Yeah. Shane kept on spinning his keys. Different is an understatement, my guy. Going wolf is one thing. But a burning wolf? Nah bruh. That's some straight demonish. A sly look took Logan's face. Should we bring out the holy water? Zamson peacefully scoffed. Funny. He is no demon. He is Andreas reborn. Naia bent over to get a closer look at Pandemona, where her smashed-up hood remained. A returner. Heir to the blood of Efrat. A king of smokeless fire. Shane quirked an odd brow. A king. He faced Zamson. Z holding out on us? You never told me you were royalty. I'm not, declared Zamson. I'm just a carrier of his legacy. Nothing more. Logan pushed off of the table and crossed his arms. Interesting way of putting it.
No.
You are Andreas. Naia turned to regard Zamson. Her voice calmly demanded that he understand her every word. The blood of Efrat flows within your veins. I have tasted it. Rather you believe it or not. The blood of who? Asked Shane. He heard her say the name seconds ago. It didn't sit. It was about to now. The whole garage was about to be floored over this one. It was ironically unexpected for Naia to see that there were wolven who did not know that name. I see that some of the Moonbearish children forget the face of the lesser wolven god. Zamson's eyes blinked in a shocking flutter. A king of smokeless fire. A wolven god.
Andreas.
Efrat. The knowledge behind it all escaped even him. Shane's eyes expanded to their limits. It all came together now. Yo. Logan looked at her funny. You gotta be fing kidding me. Zamson possesses the powers of a god. Naia happily nodded. Some power. Not all. SHT. Shane felt a little defeated at the idea. Figured he was full god. Could have really made some changes in this city. And what am I to do with this information? A mild frustration became Zamson. His life was intact. Another matter ailed him. It won't fix Pandemona. Naia turned to the car then back to Zamson. So you assume? Zamson gave Naia an odd look. Shane sat up in his seat. His interest had peaked at that second. I'm still stuck on the godly superpower part. We're children of the moon, said Logan. To humans we all have superpowers. Andreas was one of few to own gifts composed by the gods, Naia explained. She stepped up to Zamson and lovingly planted her fingers under his chin. Effort is but one of many to walk this earth long, long ago. This is the perfect moment for you to embrace Andreas' memories. It would be wise for you to acquaint yourself with these abilities. It can do well against Noctavion. Shane and Logan paid close attention to the two. Naia touched him a lot. A reluctant Zamson would brush her advances away, considering how her vampirial nature to dominate for personal gain originated from her old ways. The concept of Andreas and Zamson subsisting on the same life frequency proved baffling at best to digest. One lived as Zamson. The other, Andreas, survived through memories. Memories triggered by Naia's first bite. Concerning Zamson's recent hesitations of Naia, although conflicted given their extracurricular activities, as one would carefully put it, that withered away the night before. Logan and Shane shot quick stares at each other. Zamson and Naia have gotten close. A little too close. Recklessly close. It was meant to be. You mentioned I can do something with this to fix Pandemona, Zamson told her. Show me how. Naia smiled her warmest and tilted her head at him. It was relaxing to know that his trust in her existed. Me? I cannot guide you. Only Andreas. His memories. They are your only source. And she was right. None can aid Zamson other than the memories that fought for recognition inside his head. If Zamson was going to make something happen, if he was going to win the Mephisto races and defeat Noctavion, then the time for stalling, reluctance, and ignoring the obvious must end. It ended here. Pandemona used to be a car that raced as if it were formed from raging metal, black and starless yet otherworldly feminine with its intimidating curves. Now it was a complete wreck, a fractured shape of what once was. Zamson's companions watched him approach Pandemona. Then his eyes caught on fire. What came next was a moment to remember forever. Chapter 28. Wielding Efrat. They couldn't believe it. Shane and Logan's brains took a moment of pause, that temporary respite to make sense of what unfolded before them. Their minds hit the clutch, reversed, then trod forward very carefully as each moment traveled upon was a whole new experience for them to absorb. Because Zamson's eyes and hands were on fire. Black fire. Streams of dark fire flowed into the machine, tendrils of energy repairing the whole car. And Pandemona, what used to be Pandemona, became a blazing flock of steel parts hovering in the air like a suspended state of dismantled puzzle pieces coming back together again. During Pandemona's reassembly, Naia observed the brightest of light drifting between the fiery car chunks. It was small. A fire crystal. A jewel of molten light slipping into the assembly of Pandemona's engine. Half of Naia's face swelled at the cheek, prompting one of her eyes to thin as her lips suggested a delicate smirk, a positive indicator of realization that required no words. She looked at him as if he was Andreas, her previous woven lover. Shane's jaws hung to their limits as Pandemona returned to form. The amazement in Logan was a softer astonishment. He was too strong-willed to be so solely stuck in awe like Shane, but rooted in that head of his, Logan was totally dumbfounded. And as for Zamson, he nearly stumbled from the power exertion if not for Naia's support, seizing him before he fell. Logan reached Zamson to help him stand. He and Naia guided him to the closest stool near Pandemona's pristine form, and sat him down to catch his breath. The sensation didn't exert him, but so much power emerged from his being for the initial point that, as a first-time conduit, his body wasn't ready. But something had to be done. Shane's mind was still blown. Holly. Esichi. How do you feel? Naia asked. Zamson looked like he ran a whole marathon. Talk to me, love. Zamson rubbed his throbbing head. Feels like I just bench-pressed an 18-wheeler. Logan chuckled as he patted Zamson's shoulder. You ain't about that life yet. But you will. Naia trailed her fingers against his corn-rolled hair. The sides were always shaved, giving off that daring masculine look that was now more tired than ever. Zamson was exhausted. Still, Naia showed some pride in him coming to terms with his wolven blood right. So much so that she was secretly happy that they met in such a turbulent event to bring forth this critical revelation much later than sooner. Her pride softened as her eyes returned to Pandemona, preferably the hood. She left Logan and Shane to keep watch over Zamson and placed her attention on his car. There she gestured a raising hand. Pandemona's hood popped open. The three wolven behind her laid eyes on her quick. Logan and Shane sought Zamson's reaction next. Zamson didn't care. Pandemona's engine was a bright platinum polish composed of faultless switches and pistons geared up for maximum performance. Its flowing curves were liquid-like with a mirror finish, echoing Naia's inquisitive face as it reflected off of its every surface. She stroked a sensual hand along the crisp, silvery shafts without much knowledge of what they were, and how they operated once alive and in a blaze. She knew when Zamson raced, everything under this hood came to life, a passionate heart receiving its red-hot life force. Or was there life itself already sleeping inside its glossy framework? By some means Naia found a round hatch embedded in the engine. She grazed her fingers over its surface. The hatch pulsed a strange rune, drawing her eyes to flicker with purpose, catching on to its design as she pressed onto its symbol. A cylinder clicked open. A capsule spiraled out of the engine. It unraveled itself, revealing the same brilliant jewel she witnessed during Pandemona's revival. Zamson realized the snapping sound from the engine and focused on Naia. He never left his seat on the stool. Logan crossed his arms. Shane deliberately smirked. Naia found the source of Pandemona's dark flame, a reservoir of intense power secured in a burning gem. A gem so beautifully mesmerizing that Naia's eyes beamed a radiant gold, fascinated by its shape and potential. Delightful. Mods, Shane spoke with pride. That's an Ogan spark, named after a very old god of fire. If you know of him. Naia smiled her full fangs. The name has not escaped me. She took a chance and tapped the open capsule. The cylinder piece closed, concealing the jewel inside, then reversed back into the engine. I assume such was the case in the use of these machines and their clever attributes. Zamson grunted in agreement. What are you getting at? Do you not channel the powers of Efrit when you drive? Or, perhaps all this time you haven't need yet to accept it. Zamson took a second to think. He never considered.
No.
It's a gift from my grandmother. We never met. Shane and Logan looked at Zamson a little crazy. You never told us this. Shane blinked, lost in Zamson's words. You never told anyone of this. Zamson took a quick breath. Long story. His breathing returned to normal after a deep inhale, and he finally stood up on his own. He still looked a little beat. His posture's natural, laid-back attitude developed rugged but stubborn air this time. The expression of Zamson in this state of being silently moved Naia from within, her inner nature wiggling with cherished delight. Zamson met her at the hood, analyzing each function. Waves of relief washed over him, a cooling note of contentment, a peaceful serenity before the coming storm. Naia planted her hands on his shoulders, resting her chin on one of them. Soon we hope to hear of this tale. In the meantime we should consider your true talents for the race. Zamson nodded his head. These powers could come in handy. He did not consider them beneficial, but Naia had a way of showing him a different way, and he accepted it. He started to accept a lot from her. Shane's phone vibrated in his jacket's pocket. When he answered, the look on his face had once again sobered. Is. Shane rested his phone at his side. Hope you're ready for what's coming next. Zamson regarded Shane's solemn face. Couldn't have been that serious. What would cause Shane's emotion to soften up unless it was Noctavion catching on to their plans? He, Naia, and Logan waited for Shane to cut the suspense. Shane took a steady breath. Your final race is with Azima. Zamson's heart would have skipped a beat, but his stability kept him placid. He was still and smooth like a still river, as if the name failed to ripple the surface. Naia sensed his silence hid some sort of meaning. She dared ask, but she already knew somehow. Who is this Azima? Another rival like the last. Worse, said Zamson. An ex. Chapter 29 Inferno. An ex. Naia didn't understand. Took Logan to clarify. Old flame, he said. Hopefully that served for her brain to fathom. Though Shane just had to be extra. More along the lines of a scorned lover who gets a wild DCK up her ass every time Zamson's name is mentioned, or Zamson just so happens to be near her proximity. She's one cold bee, and not because she's one of us. If she felt jealous of another having Zamson, it did not exist above her skin. What happened for her to be so unfavorable? Logan and Shane looked at Zamson hard. If they had buckets of popcorn, they'd be sitting back enjoying the coming tale. Zamson eyed them both with mock annoyance. The two were like brothers, finding every opportunity to FCK with him. She betrayed me. Naia instantly understood him. Her betrayal was necessary. Her pause was a tad dramatic. She dismissed herself so that I may declare what is rightfully mine. Both Logan and Shane fell victim to the troubles of awkwardness. The confusion in their postures amused Naia. Logan gave them a dismissive hand as he turned away to escape the garage's approaching sex scene. Shane strangely grunted out a cough, taking his leave as well and as casually unsuspicious as possible. Naia stepped to the table of greasy metal scraps and lifted a large nut in her hand. She knew not its design and cared not of its purpose. The threaded metal block shared similar qualities with Zamson, a satisfying size with the perfect length. She turned to face him, leaning against the table. Her posture was hot for attention. Now, tell me who this Azima was? We were together. She did me dirty for another, and we parted ways after I rocked Bardolph's jaw. I see, Naia said. Bardolph's rivalry with Zamson made more sense than before. How was she? Zamson swore she was joking. You serious? She was a wolven. Did she pray to the moonbearer? Does she despise the vampirials? Is her blood too of an old tribe just like your own? Naia made every attempt to seize Zamson's heart. Zamson acted as if her advances and blooming curiosities were nothing more than techniques fit for a strategist devil. A short time had transpired since their encounter. Zamson appeared as a tough nut to crack. A man, a wolven who refused to release his heart, but had no difficulty sharing his DCK. No stranger to those who had no regard for love, Naia knew that males like Zamson relied on them in another fashion. Zamson at first was indeed distant. He cared not for her heart, refusing to commit, knowing it meant to submit. If anything, Zamson played with Naia's emotions, because Naia played with his, or tried to. She only played with the spongy flesh that stiffened after one touch. Her touch. It did not take much for Zamson to spring to life on her down there. Her sex was enslaving. He gave her that. Her body was a furnace seeking his seed to douse her flames. Like right now, as she beckoned him without having to use her hands. Her eyes gave it away. Zamson approached her. The need to explain old relationships trivial to him. There's not much to know about someone who no longer matters. He stopped in front of her and crossed his arms. His gaze was filled with a new level of certainty. Except for her defeat at the thick of my wheels. Naia closed her eyes and grinned. Her fingers were too busy playing with the big nut in her grip. Clever. I see you have returned to form. She reached for his crotch, fondling his package. He grew excited in seconds. Zamson took her by the chin. Her eyes fluttered open. A flash of gold pulsed around her thin slit pupils. Are you ready to end our secret love affair and bring us to the light as we split that Kushnik menace Noctavion to pieces? Now what makes you think that you're a secret? Zamson's hand left her chin to claim her squirming tendrils. They stirred about to let him in, escorting his touch to the back of her head as his fingers softly fastened against her skull. We have friends, you know? Friends? They disapprove of me. They still think I'm going to betray you. Just as Azima had done. They have every right. As do I. But you have become a relentless parasite. A leech. A devilish blood-sucking Nosferatu. His voice was silenced by the firm cover of Naia's hand, gentle yet demanding. I accept all other titles, but to call me a Nosferatu is crossing a dangerous line. That is where I draw blood. Dark lover. Zamson's brow remained furrowed, that stern groove warning her to remove her hand from his mouth. Naia never budged. Not until he complied with her request and retracted his intolerance. She had to admit, secretly, that she enjoyed Zamson's sudden change. His emergence as the real black wolf of smokeless fire defrosted his frigid heart, and hopefully kindled his mind awake. Perhaps her sudden grin denouncing her demand for the fake offense that it was as she carefully dropped to her knees to unfasten his pants did the trick. She unraveled his fat member and enveloped her lips around his throbbing girth. He was coming to full effect between her busy jaws. Her hot, wet, tongue-slathering mouth worked his entire shaft. Her hand stroking the silky flesh of veins until she throated him, filling his length down her neck until his sack touched her spit-dribbled chin. He grunted, groaned. Hands found the table to keep him afloat. Zamson's body was being sucked into the vortex of her divine head game. Her whimpers held as relentless as her nasty assault, until she released him from her lips and ascended before him, turning to give him her fantastic back and infamous rear. He took her, sweeping that silky bit of fabric aside, and felt her convulse and shiver in a groaning fit as every last inch of him packed inside her hot and ready pez. Promise me that we will be together. He heard her but gave her the strong rugged pump of his loins. Each time he slammed her rippling a. He tugged her against his pelvis, doing her in until she collapsed in a cum fit. When he quenched the fires of her wayward desires, they came right back. A passionate flicker of want and need spiraling into a lecherous inferno. She could never grow tired of him. Never to fall from the graces of what love he did deliver onto her. A foreigner to defeat as they never failed to find themselves entangled until coming undone, unearthing a love-defying death. A powerful devotion transcending time. Still trapped from the back, Naia lifted against him. A bit of her back arched. Enough to keep her ass against his groin and her love canal tight around his meat. Your silence is telling. Have you come to adore me? He did not answer. Zamson was strong. Resolute. At first, he did not wish to fall for her charms even though she found him more than just a memory locked in a new body. Zamson settled there and pondered. He once deemed Naia an enemy. An adversary he unapologetically buried his DCK in and showed no guilt. Perhaps he wished to FCK her to prove who she was. Performing quite the act of wits and deception. The same game in which he assumed that she, too, was playing in spades. She was from an old world, of course. A time where vampirials and wolven were not seen as allies but rivals forged in fire, blood, and carnage. Naia never regarded the wolven to be assets of slavery. The vampirials of the past defied the Moonbearer, stripped of their LV nature by the powers and corruptions of the Bloodmother, and deemed their new vampirial selves as superior. But not Naia. She conducted herself as a vampirial through and through. Still, there was always that fatal flaw to ground her to reality, Andreas. It was why she loved Andreas so much. Why she yearned for Zamson. She knew their one true womb, the root of their existence despite her being born a primal. They were no different. Struggling to accept Zamson's prior reasoning to seize her path to ascension still proved an issue. Just a little. Until he finally answered her. I will do what I can to keep you safe. As long as you do not betray me, and show me what I truly am. Chapter 30 Limo Talk. Intriguing. So the Black Wolf's been holding out on potential. You say that he was on fire. Cruising down Rose Red Boulevard, Twilight City's main strip, Noctavion found Zamson's evolution appealing to the ears. The knowledge introduced struck at his deepest curiosities, feeding his inquisitive nature as Bardolph Todrick sat across from him in Noctavion's white limo. Lady Countessa sitting close to Noctavion's side. Bardolph had called Noctavion for this moment to speak with him in regards to what he saw with Zamson. How Zamson wrecked Pandemona during his race with Casiel Kane, and how Faust Rowe became the origin point of Zamson's emergence as a wolven who, according to those fabricating for glory points on social media, breathes fire. The breathing fire concept didn't sit right with most, which could be seen on Noctavion's smartphone in the comment section of Noctavion's VidTube account. Right underneath the recorded footage of Zamson emerging from Pandemona's wreckage. Dead A cooking under the moonlight, said Bardolph, sitting comfortably across from Noctavion. Real talk. Zamson should have been well done with a side of cream corn and loaded potatoes, but this motherfucker shook the city. He was a real hellhound. Noctavion consumed Bardolph's words for what they were. Tasty morsels of information that he wished he had known or witnessed for himself. The revelation of Zamson possessing powers beyond the wolven state was information of substantial worth. He imagined what he could do with a gifted werewolf. Locating the primal became a problem. Noctavion kept reviewing the footage. The video collected a mountainous number of views, going viral as it should. And he won the race despite the incident. Absolutely astonishing. Yeah. But his car's all mangled up. Not sure how that happened. Zamson never busts in the streets. A first time for everything, I suppose. Is he to engage further? Bardolph took a hopeful breath. Here's expecting he doesn't. I'm positive he will. Noctavion skimmed the city streets outside his limo's window for only a short period. Enjoying the ride. Then back to his phone replaying the video. Zamson does not appear to be one to kneel to defeat easily. But is his victory helping us find the primal? Countessa said, interrupting the two. She hasn't said much during their review about the famous wolven outrunner. Her attention fled into the city. Eyes ever roaming. And ignoring the sensation of Noctavion's sharp gaze pricking the back of her neck. She observed the colorful meandering crowds, the busy cars, and the monstrous buildings of towering light overhead. Rose Red Boulevard was the life vein of Twilight City, a neon-soaked strip stuffed with upscale casino hotel complexes, shops, high-end restaurants and performance venues for every occasion. None of that did Countessa some good to escape the conversation. Her mind was elsewhere, lost in the pools of her own thoughts, swimming in search of a means to liberate herself from Noctavion's enigmatic hold. Her attitude toward Zamson never diminished. The black wolf left a lasting impression on her. Hence as to why she even blurted out the comment to begin with. She grew weary of Noctavion moving his lips for nothing. Bardolph was lost on how to reply to Countess's remark. Noctavion sensed her annoyance. Noctavion's never-ending crusade for an ascension that doesn't apply to him was futile. Not even the elaborate warnings of Jasper discouraged the selfish lord of crime. His unexpected dominion over the element of fire is something to take great attention to, said Noctavion. The awe in Zamson was far too genuine for him. Countessa rejected the idea. Still. But Noctavion refused to abandon the topic. A black wolf on fire. This has not been seen. Vampirials wielded special powers, elements, even mainly the primals, and one such as himself, a Kushnik, but a wolven? Noctavion wondered. Hard. Noctavion shut off the video and slipped his phone back into his inner suit jacket's pocket. Mages. Druids. Witch doctors. They are everywhere, though most hidden from society. Magic exists, but the hand controls the reins of power. If a wolven can wield fire, imagine what else can surface from the shadows. The questioning of Zamson's nature brought Noctavion to a previous tip about Zamson, his friends, and the unraveling incident in Mephisto District's Faust Row. He retained that bit of information for his own analysis, leaving Countessa entirely in the dark. He preferred her to be as ignorant as possible to it for now. It would be foolhardy at worst to ignore. Noctavion smiled. Zamson's ruling the competition. He will indeed participate in the Mad Blitz. It is there where I shall address him personally. Chapter 31 On Your 6. Ogre's Point was the only mountain range of hills and dips penetrating Twilight City's western cityscape. Winding roads and straight forest shots paved the way for all manner of transport. The wood-infested mountains did not exist without their various hiking trails and small river bends. The last of the Mephisto races was heating up with small gatherings of people and cars, half-circling the starting mark. Pandemona and Banshee sat like two estranged lovers, distant but never far. Shane wrapped his lips around his straw and slurped away until he eyed trouble coming their way. He quickly tapped Logan's arm. Logan gave Shane a bully eye for a short second. It changed when Ozima came walking up like the poisonous vixen she was. Logan yanked the fat blunt from his lips. Bad beat on your 6. Zamson looked up from his car's hood. He tapped on Ogenspark's capsule. It twisted back into Pandemona's engine. Ozima, from her black skin to sculpted hair of thick twists, swept over one side of her head to expose one shaved side. She was all the gold in the world to Zamson once. Her worth was devalued over the years, given transgressions created by her doing. That still didn't stop men and women from shooting their shots at her. Still, she was a bad BTC. She walked, talked, and breathed that attitude. But put up against a bastard like Zamson was another can of worms about to pop open right now. She's beautiful, Naia said. Her tone inside Zamson's head was pleasing. If only she was available for us to indulge in together. Zammy. Zamson chuckled. Oh, how the memories returned. How they used to be. A power couple in the streets. Freaks in the sheets. Now enemies. Thought you didn't answer to that name anymore. Only on special occasions. I hoped you'd call me by that name. I wanted to hear it fall out of your lips before I dust you back into memory. You know that's not possible. Zamson glanced back at Pandemona's engine. You know what I am. Who I am. I know you're obsessed with speed, winning, money, women, and care not about others' feelings save for your own. Is that what you tell the dogs these days? An easy scratch behind the ears from you can lure any man to do your bidding instead. You give me credit where credit's due. Besides, I had you, didn't I? For a time before you made the greatest mistake in your life. Ozima blinked at him. Green eyes hid a mean beast behind them. The other side of Ozima. If zodiac signs told any truths, it was that she had terrible Gemini tendencies. Dangerously two-faced. That other face saw Zamson for what he was, or at least what she considered him to be. It was all to save her face in the presence of guilt, scratching at her toxic ego. Why are you running Mephisto? You haven't raced like this in some time. Making sure I haven't lost my touch, and giving the city what they deserve. And that is their god. Ozima frowned. She quickly recovered. Zamson had a way with words. It wasn't the first time he got under her skin as punishment for running her mouth too much. If only she knew what really went down inside of him. Oh, my handsome dark lover. Naia said in his head. It appears my influence is making gains. That may have been true, but Zamson was f***ing with Azima. It was quick and easy to do. He had a purpose. If he must dust his ex in this city to win this race and save this city, then he shall do it without hesitation. Keep believing in yourself that way. You just might get your wish, she said with sarcasm and soft spite. Just know that even gods fall. Azima swiveled her head halfway as if she was on to him. She left it at that, gave him another look over his face, admiring him one last time before rolling her eyes at him. She returned to her car moments after. Zamson examined the pearl-white Naia GTR Storm with the spectral effects emitting from Azima's Phantom mod. Azima named her Banshee. It was Zamson's idea that inspired the name. Damn, said Logan. Still hot and ready like a box of Little Devil's pizza. Zamson smirked. Logan wasn't lying though. She can FCK herself for all I care. A vibration in his pocket had him reach for his phone. The number wasn't familiar. He answered anyway. Look above, said Lockjaw. Zamson raised his eyes over his hood, not being too obvious, and spotted Lockjaw waving from the balcony. He was surrounded by several of his gang members. I just want you to know about your old girl, and who she's been making her bread with as of late. Zamson briefly darted his eyes over at Azima chatting with others near her car. He turned his head, focusing on the call.
I'm listening.
Remember your pact with Noctavion? Azima's in the same league. She's twerking for Lupus now, conspiring with Imperia's Lord Shade. I also want to add something sweeter. Shade wants Noctavion off the map. So you allowed your bitch to lay with the Lupus gang? Asked Zamson. Azima's getting around, I see. The sound of Lockjaw's voice came off as entertained. FCK all of that bullshit, see. Me and Azima haven't been close in some time. She's a jumper. She bounced from another to land on your lap only to spring from one of the fastest outrunners for greener pastures. She's slick but a fool all in one. She just ain't too keen on growing her own damn garden. Is that all? For now. I said that I'd help. I'm also going the distance in ensuring we both get what the FCK we want when we want it. And what we want for this city is what's best. You and I both know that. Zamson nodded. No argument there. Fair enough. I appreciate the information. The pang of surprise was tiny in Zamson's gut. He did not care about the dirt on Azima's sex life. Her odd alliance with Lupus lit that little spark in him. Then again there was her connection with Lord Shade, a kind vampirial lord of Imperia City. Then it hit him. Your silence, Naia whispered in his mind. You are plotting. Zamson closed Pandemona's hood. A happy bunch of fans and social media journalists circled him. Zamson had no answer to give to Naia. Pandemona was soon aligned with Banshee, the road beyond their outrunner's sight clear for takeoff. Azima took a firm, confident breath. Zamson popped his neck with no hands. The announcer reached zero. A charring mass of darkness and steel and a white-armored wraith speared ahead. Pandemona and Banshee explode down the street. The start of their fight for top speed above the other was a dispute that lasted for miles. Their first curve forced them to drift side by side, dangerously dancing in the turn as not one of them grazed their cars. Neither of them miscalculated as they perfectly coasted the bend. Azima bared her teeth. She capped speed. So did Zamson, immune to frustration. Another curve arrived. Then another. They swayed down the path. If one eased, the other took over until they were once again dominating the road together. Naia giggled in Zamson's head. Goo. You're arguing with her. Zamson's eyes twitched.
No.
I'm f***ing her. For old time's sake. A howling and wailing of two cars tore through the street like an eerie duet. Their haunted chorus was a spine-chilling carol of chaos. Pandemona and Banshee joined in a sinister spectral flame. Their speed and unity were so tight and flawless that they oddly melded. Two opposing factors joined with a purpose. Victory. Secured inside Pandemona's driver's seat, it felt more like a military fighter jet on a one-way ticket past the sound barrier. Zamson accomplished order. Though the strong pulse of Pandemona's frightening speed could clatter teeth from gums, calmness prevailed. A phenomenal ease. An omen foretelling an ambitious storm of velocity, generating more potential for Zamson to unlock. This wasn't some lifeless hunk of alloy. Pandemona, like Banshee, lived and breathed. Alive. Able to be felt. To be heard. Their longing. The beat of their hearts was the roar of an engine that stopped only when the driver demanded, and raced at the slam of the pedal. Zamson listened. Pandemona spoke. Banshee screamed over Pandemona's voice. Zamson pushed Pandemona to the limit. Like before. When Andreas' memories caused him to crash. Not this time. If you must FCK her, then FCK her right. Let go of what once was and surrender yourself to destiny. Naia's soothing words blanketed his mind, comforting him, igniting his soul. Make her regret. Show her who rules the streets of twilight. Zamson bared his teeth, each tooth sharpened wolf mode, every bit of him fired up from within. The only sign of Effort's blessing burst from his eyes. The flames of Pandemona roared, savage flames of obsidian erupting from all over her prized black frame. Her engine sizzled, pistons pummeled, exhaust pipes blowing like a torch out of hell. Naia said one word. Bang! The black wolf of smokeless fire emerged in the aspect of Pandemona. Her sudden level of flames and wicked speed stunned Azima as she freaked out behind the wheel, gasping and cursing as she eased off the gas, afraid of the explosion of fire-busting Banshee's screaming energy. It did. Totally did. Banshee lost her shriek. The energy radiating off of its frame, contrails of ghostly light included, fluttered as if the car's own heart stopped from the shock of Zamson's otherworldly dominance. The whole event came out of nowhere to seize the night. And the finish line. A power trance. Zamson whipped the wheel. Pandemona went into a crazy angle and slid with excellence. She shrieked in her half-turn and drifted to a savage stop, smoke and flaming skid marks left in her furious wake. Azima came in quickly but stopped a good pace away from Zamson as he stepped out of Pandemona and shocked the crowds. He smoldered a black aura. Shane and Logan cleared the railings, coming at Zamson with the most amazed and hype expression on their faces, overlooking how superpowered Zamson appeared at this point. It didn't matter. Only victory. Azima slipped out of Banshee. She didn't understand. Banshee had him. Pandemona should be second to her. This was her moment. Zamson stole it from her. Was it hers to even claim? Did her disappointment become worthy of justification at this point?
No.
It didn't. She knew this. She denied it. She was defeated. It was high time to swallow the pill of defeat just as Lockjaw had done and focus on what was really going down here. Zamson was renewed. What in the hells? Azima softly said. This was too much. It angered her. She had to know how and why. Chapter 32 Shade. Explain yourself. Azima demanded, coming for Zamson, her eyes like jade daggers. Your mods could not have earned you fair triumph. Shane went to open his mouth. Azima lifted a finger at him. Shane swallowed his words behind another sip from his cup. Logan cuffed a fist to mouth, covering a laugh. What I do with my car is for my crew and me, Zamson told her. His smoldering form fizzled out. Not for you. Oh? Careful how you throw that word around. Azima scoffed as if disgusted. It was in vain. Justifying her infidelity wouldn't be too wise of a call to make. It was never wise to attempt to begin with. She dismissed the remark. That was not your mod. If I have cheated, then I'd be disqualified. As you can see. He turned to the cheering crowd. His arms extended to welcome their festive cries. I stand victorious and you have a debt to pay. For your sake you best not renege. I know where you sleep and who you sleep with. What are you talking? I'm talking about your new fling with Lupus. Need I even speak of the other? Lockjaw. Azima gave Zamson a weak glare. How Zamson knew of her new gang affiliation left her in the dark before briefly finding a little light to shed on his knowledge. I'm going to make an offer. Tell me everything you know about Lupus and your special relationship, and I'll tell you exactly what's going on. Why would I be so interested in that? Because I know that we have something heavy in common, and you'll want to hear it.
Impossible.
Azima rejected Zamson's words. She also rejected Naia all up on him like she owned him. Azima never liked any woman in Zamson's personal space. None could top Azima and Zamson. Tonight conspired to destroy that. It began inside Zamson's living room. You? Think you can just ride on into Obsidian Keep and dethrone the Lord of Crime? Azima disappointedly noted Naia's loving hold on Zamson as he sat like a self-proclaimed street king with his provocative vampirial hussy lounging on him. It personally clawed at Azima, irritating her. She has you wrapped around her fingers, doesn't she? Naia played her fingers against Zamson's hair. She stroked them as if petting a wolf. Irony. Oh, sweet thing. We are wrapped around each other. Logan looked among the two and could sense the invisible line of tension stressing out between Naia and Azima. If not for their shared goals, Logan would have allowed them to fight. Primal or not, he couldn't tell the victor. He closed his scrutiny on Azima. What does Imperia's finest want with Noctavion? Every lord knows of Noctavion's ruthless appetite for excelling ambitions. No goal lies out of reach from him. Azima matched eyes with Naia. The vampirial primal was a lovely creature with curves that flowed like royal honey. Even her majestic red dreadlocks stunned her for only a moment. Naia's sudden snap of envy debilitated that sensation. If Noctavion feels it necessary for the greater good of the vampirial power, he will do just that. Every ambition is designed to conquer the hand of Ambrogio. Noctavion's a blood serpent. He will consume it until he becomes the hand. It made absolute sense. Zamson experienced Noctavion's ambition that moment he took the pact. With Naia it all came together. As for Azima's part in it, Lord Shade sent you here. Still doesn't answer your part with Lupus. They're here too. We're here because of her. Azima planted her glare back on Naia. Shade knows you're awake. He also wishes to speak with you. The thrum beneath Azima's jacket prompted her hand to pull out her smartphone from her jacket's inner pocket. One look at the phone, she extended it to Zamson, who wasted no time claiming it. He answered the call. A voice smooth as fine wine greeted his ears. I can only assume that this is the infamously famous Zamson Lovell, said Lord Shade. His shrewd voice skipped no beat. Naia is a newcomer to this era. I expected another to answer for her since she's yet versed in the uses of a phone. Lord Shade, replied Zamson. I hear we share something in common. Indeed. Put me on speaker. Allow me to announce my presence among you. Zamson hit the speaker button and kept the phone propped in his hand. You're good to go. Your receptiveness is greatly appreciated, Black Wolf. Shade paused. He spoke to Naia now. It has been ages since we last saw each other. Hearing Shade's voice was like hearing an old friend. Nice to see that you're still breathing, Shadira. Naia grinned. The clever vampirial sounded like he hadn't changed a bit. So much that she called him by his real name. The times have served you well. Maintaining your status as a lord must have been tedious. Before Imperia gained its crown, it was just a tiny town. Before that, a humble village of humans and nightbloods alike, Shade said. Naia agreed. Not without its strife. Sure, we had our brushes with chaos by armies, bandits, and now the occasional criminal masterminds, but we have persevered. Lord Shade paused. It is foolish to test a gentle hand. Noctavion did just that, said Naia. Noctavion has done enough to end him. He is becoming a problem. Took generations to build, but the Kushnik has finally shown his true fangs. How and why was he allowed to progress to this point? Kushniks do not play well with vampirials. Has the hand truly dulled? Ambrogio has always remained a hand of cryptic order, said Shade. Some Kushniks have turned an eye away from their kindred's beliefs of dominance over the vampirials. Naia found that hard to stomach. She frowned in response to it. Marvelous. Shade chuckled. It almost sounded angelic. The irony. The fallen lords back then believed that the Wolven were valuable servants. Look what that brought them. We can't have another situation succeeding it. We all will be in danger if allowed. What do you propose? Asked Zamson. A coup against the rising tyrant, replied Shade. Your savior has won Mephisto. Very good. Noctavion loves a good race, as strange as that appears. You're expected to dominate the Madblitz, Black Wolf. We shall make ourselves known there. Every camera and big name known to urban society will be there, said Zamson. The plan appeared a little concerning. You sure that's the safest option? Trust me, it will be the best of spectacles. Exposing Noctavion for what he truly is. We are all in on it. I'm just the one to move forward with it. Shade paused again, shaping his last words. As for you and your pack, you are the head of the spear to slay the rabid beast. The hand of Ambrogio will not interfere. We can do without one finger. So to say, a good evening to you and yours. We shall meet in person soon. The hill district of Vermilion Heights was a mass of serpentine roads nestled in the woodlands of Cardinal Park, Twilight City's second-largest recreational square and wildlife reserve. Humans and nightbloods gathered here for the Mad Blitz, the final outrunner competition that will crown the victor as a Duke of the Streets. As the people this night would say. This is it. Shane exclaimed with a bit of pep in his step as he walked. He slapped a hand on Zamson's shoulder, congratulating him for making it to the final phases as they neared Logan and his group of biker friends. Nothing can hold you, we all the way up. Sure you can keep up? Keep up. Logan comically scoffed. They clasped hands as if attempting to arm wrestle, a handshake declaring strength and trust. After what happened to you? He peeped at the competition nearby. Sure you can keep up? Zamson looked over the contestants parked across the way. 8 opponents, a mingling of fast cars with souped-up sport bikes. He checked one of the fancy houses on the perfect hill overlooking the race. He counted as many vampirial suits that roamed the large gazebo. Noctavion was among them. the whitest suit-wearing Kushnik pretending to be relevant among his so-called vampirial equals. If only he knew that his doom was upon him. Zamson blinked and laid his eyes back on the crowds, scanning over the contest one last time. A good thing he did. A light-skinned woman with a thick curly white afro and a dark, shaved-head man with black eyes and fancy ear cuffs watched Zamson's every move. "Looks like you've won some admirers," Naia said. Her voice became a habitual residence inside Zamson's head now. Zamson watched back. For only a moment. He didn't know them. The whole act was weird to Zamson anyway. He returned his attention back to Logan and the group, preferably Shane. Zamson expected Shane to give them the lowdown on who they were up against. "What you got? See that bumblebee-colored Swiftie right there? That's Olivia's Venom GTX. She can hit from 0 to 214 into 0 in fewer than 30 flashes." He pointed to the black and silver car next. "The Gaddy 500. Count Othello's ride. He and Olivia are both a couple of vampirial quickies looking to dust you." He gestured a nonchalant finger at the two extreme-looking sport bikes that mirrored each other. "Twins. Isabella and Layla's ebony and ivory. The Wolven duo is inseparable. Trust me. I know. Intimately. Slip up, and you'll fall victim to their fat as zipping ahead." Lastly, Shane guided Zamson's observation over the last teams against him. He warned him about Dante's Devil Chaser and Desdemona's Eve 1800. For the life of him, Shane had a tough time putting his finger on the metallic bronze Beamer RX-0 and the wicked-shaped Sylphy Alpha 300. The two human drivers, Princeton Pharaoh and Sol Royale, must have been out-of-towners. Zamson figured as much. The bald guy and the chick with the icy white afro didn't feel like the typical Twilighters. The contestants soon met up at the starting line, engines ready to scream. Logan fixed his aggressive wolf head helmet. He looked beside him, tapping where his ear was to signal Zamson, who nodded and tapped his own ear. Both of them were wearing earbuds for communication. Zamson faced the road ahead and flexed his fingers around his steering wheel. They were ready. Zamson's phone rang. The number was unknown. He answered.
"Congratulations. Zgrited Noctavion."
"Noctavion Vladimis," said Zamson. Sarcasm spiced his voice. "We speak again. Another job for me." "Quick to get to work, I see," said Noctavion. Zamson's sarcasm was wholly comical at best to him. "Fantastic. If only that was so. This isn't a summon." "Then what is it?" "I wanted to first praise you for your performance thus far. Your reputation as the Black Wolf precedes you by far. Even my beloved finds your talent for victory comforting." Zamson found that as the funniest lie ever told. "That's funny. I thought the Beatich had no love for us street folk." Noctavion sounded like he was smiling. "Depends on the folk." Zamson cut him off. "You're stalling. You can see right through me. Spectacular. I wonder what else you can do? Given your unique metamorphosis at the hands of that unfortunate wreck, and the fact that your famous set of wheels appears good as new. You're just full of surprises." Zamson's brow wrinkled. "And you're full of SH. You know, it never dawned upon me until a little doggy unraveled your involvement with the primal. It was about time." Noctavion's once leisured tone revealed a hint of darkness. Zamson almost smirked from it. "Took you long enough." "All things come to those gifted with patience," said Noctavion. "But all this time, right under my nose. It is like that sometimes, I suppose. Matters not anymore. I have what I want right here, right now." A low growl crept into Zamson's throat. He tried to muzzle it down. Traces of it rumbled with his voice. "You can't have her." "Oh, I will. It'll be in your best interest to surrender yourself and return what is mine. If you refuse, and for Bloodmother's sake, I hope you do not, then I will be forced to apply extreme measures that none of you will survive from." The announcer outside was approaching the start line. Zamson peeped out Logan one last time. The look on Logan's face spoke volumes. He heard everything. Inconceivable. Not even Naia could figure it out. They were doing so good, avoiding Noctavion's detection. How does he know? Zamson knew. There was only one incident to connect those dots. When Naia wrecked Lockjaw's car. All else appeared irrelevant now. "Doesn't matter. We're only here for one thing." Noctavion chuckled. His sinister chuckle did nothing to shake Zamson. Even when faced with dire odds, you concern yourself with a trivial race?
"No."
Zamson's eyes burned a hot fire. "We're only here to kill you." Logan revved up Fenrir. "Welp. We've reached the point of no return." The announcer finally reached 0. Will squealed.